Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do the review for The Last of Us. It premiered a couple days ago. I did a reaction to it, like a full-on reaction with the episode and everything, but with technical difficulties prevented me from actually making the video. For some reason, the file just did not want to create. I kept getting errors, and I tried everything under the sun to try to fix it, but in the end, I just said, fuck it, and I'm going to stick to the review format that I've used in the past for other things. And so, with that out of the way, Last of Us TV show, as we know, is based on the PlayStation series that came out in 2013. It is being called one of the best video game adaptations ever, and I have to agree completely. This has been, so far, I mean, we got the premiere episode, and it's going to be week by week, so that part kind of sucks, but in the end, it does give you something to look forward to every Sunday. But with this premiere episode, they absolutely did it right. They kicked it off great from the start. The way they did the episode, the way we see the beginning of it through Sarah's eyes. And if you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to try and spoil it, but chances are I'm going to. So just disregard that last comment. I have been a huge fan of The Last of Us since it came out on PlayStation 3 way back in 2013. And I can safely say it is my favorite game of all time. I have played that game dozens of times through, always looking for new things that I might have missed in a previous playthrough. And when they first announced, I believe it was in 2019, that they were considering this for production or it was in development, I was immediately psyched. I was ready to watch this show, and so I've been waiting patiently ever since then to catch this. And I finally, like a lot of people, I got to sit down and I got to watch this the hour that it dropped on HBOmax, and it completely blew me away. The way that they introduced the characters and the casting, I gotta say, when I first heard about it, I was a little unsure. I had some concerns regarding the casting. I was not familiar with a lot of Pedro Pascal's work or Bella Ramsey's. I know the shows that they've been in the past, but they just weren't shows that I had watched. And so I was a little unsure because, yes, there could have been other ones that they could have considered and people that might have been considered even better for those roles. But getting into the episode, if you're not familiar with it, it takes place. Now, this version of it takes place 10 years prior than what the game does because they wanted to push it back to, so when they got to the post-apocalyptic part, that it took place present day, because in the game it starts off and then it has a time jump of 20 years. So they wanted to push it back because they didn't want to have to picture how things would be another 20 years from now in 2043. So that way they just kind of stuck with what they know and what they've done in the game and everything, and just kind of to make it more relatable, I think. And so it starts off with with 2003 in Texas with this girl named Sarah and her father named Joel. Now, Joel is a single father, and he's been raising Sarah on his own. There's not a whole lot of backstory on why he's a single father. I don't know if it's mentioned in the game or any other content that maybe the mother left or she died during childbirth or what happened. And so he's raising this girl on his own, and it takes us through through the outbreak day that initially takes place. It takes us through what happens in her eyes because she unfortunately does not make it past that first episode. That's kind of the big heartbreaking moment that the game is known for. In the day of the outbreak, while Joel, his brother Tommy, and Sarah are trying to escape all the chaos that's going on around them, they get confronted by soldiers that are trying to quarantine the area, and she unfortunately gets shot and bleeds out and dies. And then that's where we take our time jump. It jumps 20 years later. Joel is living in the Boston quarantine area. There are multiple quarantine areas and multiple cities, but a lot of them are defected, or not defected, but defunct, and soldiers have run away from them or left them to the people of that particular area, because as the apocalypse happened with this particular story, the government falls apart. There is no democracy. There is no any kind of structure to it. There's just Fedra, who are just soldiers, and they're very brutal with their rules and their punishments and everything. So we jump 20 years later. Joel is in this quarantine zone with his partner Tess, and he's a black market smuggler for this. He will get things that are very hard to come by, being that the world ended, so there's no production, there's no government, there's no technology. So he's become this black market smuggler to get a hold of these things, and he's known for being a very brutal man and not to be fucked with for the most part. And so it's the story of him and Tess. First off, they go in and out of the zone to get these different things or have people smuggle them to them and meet them in different areas. Well, this story, it's a little bit different. They did make changes between between the game and between the series, which is fine because it adds a little depth and a little mystery to it, because you don't want to just have a carbon copy of one thing, then you know what's going to go on through it, and then it's just no point in watching it. But they are making changes, and so that'll be good. We get back to where Joel is living in this quarantine area. He meets up with this soldier to exchange goods. It's in this that we also discovered one of the little changes is that Joel is a drug dealer. He's dealing oxycodones and whatever he can get a hold of from another quarantine zone that actually has a production facility for pills and bullets. That's like the main import export thing they got going on for that. So he's dealing with the soldier, makes his deal, gets what he calls ration cards. It's the form of currency within this world. And he goes about his day and meets up with Tess, and they're supposed to get this battery. Now, this is another difference between the game and between the series. In the game, they are trying to smuggle weapons. They have a set of, or a shipment of guns and everything that they're trying to get to then sell or whatever they do with those guns. And they're going through another guy who inevitably screws them over and sells them to another organization called the Fireflies. The Fireflies are a group of people wanting to bring back the government to what it used to be, and they are seen as terrorists and just people that cause destruction and chaos, and so they are hunted, or they are at war with the Fedra to bring back what the government was and everything. And so in the game, this guy that's the middleman, his name is Robert. He has very little to do in the series as well as the game. He ends up in the same situation. But he goes behind Joel's back, sells these guns and everything. But in the series, it's a car battery because Joel's wanting to get out of the quarantine zone to go track down his brother because they became separated over that 20-year time jump. And so he goes behind his back, sells this battery to the same group of people. Turns out it's a shit battery that's no good. Robert gets himself killed, but which we're okay with because he's a shit person. And this is where the story really takes off and picks up. And this is where Joel officially meets Ellie. She is a kid that has grown up in this world where this virus that ended the world, also known as cordyceps, it's a fungal virus that invades the brain and takes over that person, makes them violent, and just completely changes who they are, takes over their body, and it goes through different stages of infection. Well, during an outing that Ellie had with a friend, Ellie gets bitten and doesn't change. She actually realizes that she is immune. Her brain mutates the cordyceps in a way that it doesn't affect her. And so it's in this that this group, that turns out that the leader of the group of the Fireflies is more or less Ellie's adoptive mother that she didn't know about because both her parents are gone. They had died at some point during this. They're supposed to go into more detail in this within the series because it's something that's passed over within the game, so we don't know anything about her parents or where she comes from. But she leaves it. The leader of the Fireflies is named Marlene, by the way. She leaves up to Joel and Tess, which is Joel's more or less girlfriend. And because they have kind of a history, she sends Ellie off with Joel to be smuggled out of the city because during a firefight that Marlene had with Robert and his group of people, she was injured, and so she can no longer take Ellie. And really, as they're on their way out of the city, they get stopped by a soldier after they're outside of the walls of the quarantine zone. And it's during this that Joel has kind of a flashback as this soldier is pointing a gun at Ellie, and he's got severe PTSD from the whole situation because he lost his daughters. I mean, who wouldn't? And so he tackles a soldier, beats him to death, and during all of this, they had just been tested. They have scanners to test for infected people. And so after this, they discover that Ellie is infected, but her bite is 3 weeks old and she has never shown any signs or symptoms of the cordyceps. And so they realize that she is immune. And the whole point of this is to deliver her to a group of the Fireflies to go off to be at their laboratories out west where they are working on a cure. And so begins the adventure of the whole thing, where eventually it's going to take Ellie and these other survivors across the country to this lab, and just all kinds of things along the way. So I won't really spoil a whole lot of it. But then the episodes ends with them leaving the quarantine zone and going into the inner city that is in complete ruins from being bombed and everything when the infection first broke out. And you see this flash shot of this iconic set of towers that are collapsed into each other. It's like a big thing within the game and everything. If you see these towers and you've played the game and everything, you know this is where these towers come from. Kind of with that quick little playback of the first episode, here are my afterthoughts. It was a stellar start to the series. It has high marks on every level across the board, and with different creators and news outlets and everything, it has high scores within everything. It did perfect. Recreating this game is, like I had mentioned in the beginning of the video, it has become one of the most well adapted video games to TV show ever. Everyone that has seen it has nothing but good things to say about it, and me included, being a huge fan. Like I said, I've played this game repeatedly. There is a second game, but there are some things about it people don't like, and it's still has yet to be seen whether or not they'll take that second game and make another season of the show, because they said they're not going to go outside of the games. They're not going to create all this extra content or extra story or whatever just to write it for the series. They're going to stay within that game world. And there are changes that I'll mention within this TV series that they did not go with that are from the game. One of the biggest ones is the fact that there are no spores in the game. Spores are formed from decomposing bodies where infected people have killed over and died, and this stuff continues to grow within the corpse of this body or of this person, and then it creates spores, and that's air infectant of the virus, and so people can get infected just from breathing it in. This is just something they designed not to go with within the TV adaptation of the game, which is fine. I can kind of understand it. You don't want, or they, maybe it's a logistics thing, but maybe they don't want their actors to be in full face respirators for portions of it or whatever. And also, me being in the background that I was in has waste work, so I had to be certified in all that different type of respirators and what have you. And with every respirator, you have to have a clean shaven face to even have it work. So Joel being the gruff and and everything, and then we got characters that are going to be introduced that just have full man beards. Respirators would do them no good. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But other than that, we're going to jump into the casting now. Now, the casting of the show, I was really unsure of, like I'd mentioned before, of the casting. But then Pedro Pascal especially completely exceeded my expectations. He took this character that I was not sure he could play and just completely recreated what was in the game and just completely dominated the part and blew it out of the water. He, because in the game, yes, they are like Tommy, Joel, Sarah, they're all full-blown white folks from South Texas or whatever part of Texas. And so they're kind of hillbilly-ish, or they have that quality about them growing up in the South. And so to take it and kind of make them have a different background and slightly different race and everything, it's it's kind of annoyed a lot of people. I didn't really care one way. I just was not sure that he was right for the part, mostly because I was not familiar with a lot of his stuff. But he definitely came in and just completely destroyed the part. I mean, he nailed it to a T. And so I'm really excited to see him continue on. And Bella Ramsey too. She came in. She says she actually kind of she worked on her American accent because she is from Game of Thrones as well as Pedro Pascal, but she's got that British accent and everything. So she actually worked on her American accent by cursing. And Ellie does a hell of a lot of cursing, which you'll see if you haven't watched the episode yet. But all in all, overall of the whole episode and the kind of look forward or whatever that they gave us, this is going to be an epic series. It is going to score high, I believe, every episode. People are going to love it. I mean, they already do. There's plenty of reactions out there on YouTube where you can see, and just it is an amazing show, an amazing cast, amazing acting, and the just the way they put together the series, they nailed it. It's perfect. With all of that said, that was my review and some afterthoughts I had about it. And so it really did a great job, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. So, anyways, guys, if you enjoyed my little kind of playback review afterthoughts kind of thing, please leave the comments so we can continue the discussion below. I'd really appreciate it. I want to hear your thoughts, what you thought about it, what you think the future holds for the series, and what do you think of the casting, just any of it. I want to know what you think about it. And so I guess that'll do it. So until next time, guys, leave those comments, leave those likes, and if you feel so inclined, please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. So I will catch you next time, guys. Bye.